Rohan loved visiting his grandmother's house. It was a small, cozy home with a beautiful garden full of colorful flowers and a big mango tree. Every summer, his parents sent him to stay with Grandma for a few weeks, and those were the best days of his childhood. Grandma, an old woman with silver hair and warm eyes, always welcomed him with open arms. She told the best stories, tales of kings and warriors, of magical lands and hidden treasures. Rohan could sit beside her for hours listening to her soft voice. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset, Rohan asked, "Grandma, why do you always look at the mango tree like that?" She smiled and patted his head. "Because that tree holds a promise." "A promise?" he asked, confused. "Yes," she said. "Your grandfather planted it when your father was born. He promised me that as long as this tree stood tall, our family would always stay together, no matter what." Rohan loved the story. He climbed the mango tree every day. Rohan plucked the ripest mangoes for Grandma. They would sit under its shade, eating juicy slices while she told him stories of her youth. Years passed, and Rohan grew up. His visits to Grandma's house became less frequent as school, college, and work kept him busy. Grandma still waited for him, always asking when he would come home. One day, he finally took time off and returned to the little house. It hadn't changed, but Grandma had. She was thinner, her hair whiter, and her steps slower. Yet, when she saw Rohan, her eyes sparkled like they always did. He hugged her tightly. "I'm sorry for not visiting sooner." She smiled. "You're here now, and that's all that matters." That evening, as they sat on the porch, Rohan looked at the mango tree. It was still standing strong, but something was different. Many of its branches were weak, and some leaves had turned yellow. "The tree is getting old," Grandma whispered, as if reading his thoughts. Rohan felt a lump in his throat. "Will it fall?" She took his hand and squeezed it gently. "Everything has its time, dear, but the promise remains." A few months later, Rohan received a call. Grandma had passed away in her sleep. He rushed back home, heartbroken. The house felt empty without her laughter. The mango tree stood silently in the garden. The next morning, as he walked outside, he noticed a small sapling near the tree. It must have grown from one of the fallen mangoes. Tears filled his eyes. He knelt down and placed his hand over the tiny plant. "I promise to take care of you, just like Grandma did." Years later, Rohan's children played under the shade of the new mango tree, listening to stories about their great-grandmother. The promise lived on.